I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it? Okay, so we're on this discussion about Cloned Tyrone, and I'm so happy that we're having this conversation at the beginning of the year, especially since we were closing out the year talking about decolonization. This really feeds into it, because if we're thinking about the ways that all of us need to reprogram our understanding, like the political, the ideological, the faith-based and theoretical ways that we are experiencing the world, Cloned Tyrone really allows us to have a greater understanding of the tropes that are happening specifically in the Black community, which is why I appreciated this movie, though it was laborious to get through that first half hour to 45 minutes because of the pain of the images and the level of entertainment that we get from these archetypal tropes. I don't want to act like it's also not funny to it is funny to over exaggerate the pimp and the hoe and the drug dealer in these communities. We know that they exist, and we know that there is a narrative about them specifically in the Black community, though they exist in all communities. Yeah. But
spoiler alert. Let's before you get started, I'm sorry to interrupt, but spoiler alert. We said this in the last episode. If you haven't watched They Cloned Tyrone, we're going to be talking a lot about the details of it. We're going to be revealing some spoilers. So you pause us, go watch the movie, then come back if you want to, but we need to dig into the details, and there's no way to do that without spoiling it. So
we're going to talk about it. And I mean, so it's funny because spoiler alert and no, because we have seen these stories about our communities, right? And just by the name of They Cloned Tyrone. So we know that Tyrone is getting cloned, y'all. We know that other people in the community are getting cloned. Like, that's just the reality of what it is that you're hearing and listening to. But it's the way that they talk about it that is particularly interesting and a really good eye-opening way to think about mind control and programming. And some of the things that I wanted to talk about is like this element of like having like the criminal industrial conspirators. It's like some language that I think is like really great. Industrial conspirators controlling our minds. And in the Black community, there are specific themes that we talk about. And you mentioned this on the first part of the episodes, that we are being mind controlled through our food. They specifically spoke into chicken because there is this narrative about Black folks loving chicken, but I know everybody loves chicken because I've been across the world, and everywhere you go, there's somebody that has like a real good chicken meal. So, but this chicken narrative and it being in the food and the food being poisoned in a way that also causes some type of mind control and causes some type of impact on the community. Not only that, with the hair care products, because there has been a long term of Black women in particular doing things to their hair to liking it more to white hair. So like perming your hair to straighten out the curls, hot combing, and doing this whole very violent process to the head. So and I can say that as a person with locks in their hair, nothing to my sisters who are doing all the things to their hair, but we do know nowadays that there's tons of chemicals in those things that are really harmful to our hair and to our biological function. Also talking about like disrupting faith, because in Black communities, we've really known that faith is a guiding force on how to be in community with one another and how to relate to another. A lot of people go into the church house in Black communities, and it's disrupted through this mind control, or it's being used in a particular way in this movie to speak about mind control. They're talking about also trust and obedience and programming, and like getting people to be obedience to the larger narrative that folks want. They want the pimp, the hoe, and the drug dealer in the communities because that specific archetype keeps the community down in a particular type of way.
Yeah.
And throughout this movie, I'm not sure if you noticed, but the only person that was moving through all of the iterations, the Nancy Drew character, the person who was trying to uncover and figure it out, was the archetype of the Black woman, though the Black woman was seen as a prostitute, right? So like a hypersexualized female. So it's another archetype that is given about the Black woman, but that is the one person that was not being impacted by all of this mind control stuff. She was able
I
to
did notice that. Yeah, when they had the confrontation with the Kiefer Sutherland character, she was the one that didn't get
at the restaurant, she was like, it's in the chicken. Don't eat the chicken.
right. Don't
At
eat
the church,
the
she
chicken.
was like,
Right.
cover your ears. Don't listen to this. So it was the Black woman who was like being the messenger that is like trying to like help people connect to the level of mind control, which I thought was lovely and fascinating.
I did love that. But I was curious about your thoughts around, because at one point we realized that Fontaine, who is the main character, who is the Tyrone character, he realizes that his mom is not real. That there are a couple of times that he goes through his iteration of his experience in the world before he realizes he's been cloned. And he makes a sandwich and he goes past his mom's door in his house and he says, "Ma, I made a sandwich. Do you want one?" And she answers and says, "No, honey, I ate at the fish fry. I'm still full." Or
and to contextualize this, hold on. We have to say that he has been having a conversation with his mother through a door for a long period. Because one of the things that they did with these archetypal tropes in this movie is humanize them and explain what their situation actually was. Yes. And what I understood about Fontaine, because he had a major traumatic event that happened to his life, through the ways that people move through community, he lost his little brother. Yes. And so that, in his understanding and world, made his mother go into a severe depression where she pretty much stayed in the room and didn't come out, and there was no real connection. And Fontaine was trying to hold his mother as he held himself, working through the trauma and never actually being able to have any type of support to go through the bereavement of that level of loss of his little brother, which is also the relationship that he had with the little boy who he asked to be a snitch, was falling into place as his little brother. So he was really being very protective of him in the snitching. And that wasn't really spoken to. We never actually saw Fontaine dealing any drugs. We did see him actually dealing with people in the community, but you never saw him doing any form of exchange. He was the archetype of the drug dealer. Right. He actually was taking care of the little boy, making sure that the little boy did his homework, actually beating up the people who actually were selling the drugs in community. Right. And he also had this relationship with the pimp in the community where he was extracting, I'm not sure from the pimp, because we never really saw what he went to the pimp's house to like get. He was trying to find something from him, but it was like money.
It was money. Yeah, it was money because
his resource.
Yeah. But I don't know what it was from. I don't know if he was getting a cut from. Yeah.
And because we saw the pimp not actually having power in the community, he was an extremely weak person that didn't command what we have an expectation of pimps to actually be doing, but just his presence. His presence actually had an impact, but not that he was actually doing anything. His presence had an impact. And I think that was central to them making a point about the movie and these archetypes and tropes that we have in Black communities that create harm.
So getting back to the Black women and how they manifest in the movie, I thought it was so interesting when he finds out after a couple of iterations, once he realizes that he's been cloned and that this is happening, he's starting to unpack the realities of what's happening. Is he goes by his mom's room. He says, "Mom, can we talk?" Yes. And she says, "Not right now, honey. I'm watching my stories." And he opens the door. He's like done with this. And he opens the door and he finds a recorder on a table. There's nothing else in the room, just a table with a recorder on it. And the recorder is voice activated to answer his questions. And of course he gets very upset, and he, because we have no idea what happened to his mom. And, at this point, we have no idea how many times he's been cloned. We have no idea how long he's been caught in this loop and still mourning is the loss of his brother. We find out a little bit later, but we, at this point we don't know. So yeah, I thought it was very interesting, the role of the Black woman in this, and how and even to where the prostitute character Yo-Yo gets, when she's the Nancy Drew. I'll start to call her the Nancy Drew because I don't like that. She becomes much more in her evolution in the movie. the Nancy Drew character Yo-Yo gets kidnapped by the white people that are doing the cloning, and she gets taken down into the bunker area that we talked about, where they're doing all of the experiments on everyone, and they start to do an experiment with her on a new hair product that has a higher level of this chemical in it. They're testing it on her, and what they don't realize is that she's wearing a wig, because she has an afro on when they
Protective
they
hairstyle.
kidnap her, and it's a wig, right?
Yes.
And so I thought that was interesting. That went down in my notes, is that the white people didn't realize that a Black woman's hair is often can be a wig, and is not so they're putting all of the stuff on her, and they're commenting to themselves that, this is a lot stronger than it usually is, and what if this doesn't go well? And the other one's like, well, we'll take another one so that we can keep trying it or something. And so she pretends as if it kills her, because she's trying to get them to believe that they have got her in this scenario. And then when events happen that cause her to break out, she takes off the wig, and of course all of the chemicals on the wig, and she's good to go. And I thought that was a beautiful choice. I thought that was a gorgeous choice in the storyline. So
yeah. And I see that also with a different perspective.
Good.
That
I'm sure you do. I want to know. What did I not see through my white eyes? Because I'm sure there was plenty.
I mean, you just wouldn't know. So, and I also watch like the current day Black exploitation TV network, which I absolutely love. And there's a whole bunch of wig snatching on that show, both with Black and white and Latino women. So everybody's wearing wigs. So I'm just going to say that. But the other thing is that the way that we talk about measures of doing our hair differently these days is protective hairstyles, right? Because we know that there is so much chemical and so much harm that most people will braid their hair down, put on a thing, and wear a fake type of hair situation to actually protect
themselves from
on their hair. And there's some harm pieces that happen with that, the way that process goes, but it is considered more of a protective hairstyle to maintain your natural hair, as you're also playing this role that needs to play to help you advance and survive in the United States in particular, and to have a type of look.
I also thought about the what happens in today's society with with white society saying that natural hair on Black women is not professional, legal. Right? Yeah, not legal, not professional, and so they've made it, criminalized it to and we did get the Crown Act, but I have no idea if that's even still in
I mean, we get this legislation, but how it's translated and how it executes in communities and schools, you know that a lot of young people, they're getting their hair cut, they're getting arrested, they're getting thrown out of school.
Young people getting braided, getting locks cut off because can't compete in sports and that kind of thing. So so that I thought that was another choice, another part of that weaving of storytelling into what's happening today.
And being able to have this protective hairstyle protected her from this mind control that was happening through this community. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that they said that they were winning the future race. So in this, creating this lab in a Black community and doing all of this testing on like the social behaviors of Black people to make a determination about what the future race should look like. To your point, they were talking about making communities safer through assimilation. And the assimilation was also trying to maintain this authenticity of like Black culture within it.
Right.
So
Black
culture was the thing that was the catalyst that was pushing it through, and they were trying to maintain that part of Black culture, but make it white, have whiteness take it over.
I know the dichotomy of that, and then as we get as we start to unpack more the storyline, when our main characters Fontaine, Slick, and Yo-Yo go down into and they disrupt what's going on down in the bunker and try to free the clones and that kind of thing. We find out that the original Fontaine is the
Architect.
is the lead chemist that is pushing this project. And his line that I just really just kind of blew me away was assimilation is better than annihilation. And that was his, when he has a conversation with the current Fontaine, and they talk about why this is happening, and he says, well, assimilation is better than annihilation, and they were going to annihilate us anyway, so this way. And he's got behind him, he's got iterations from a darker skinned black person all the way to the lighter skinned with the afro. They do talk about the hair. They say that the hair is the most stubborn, and it's the last thing for them to trade. And that's why we see sprinkled throughout the movie in the pretend version of the Glen, these folks, individuals, humans that have very, very light skin, but have afros still, because they are the assimilated ones, and they're ending up doing the bidding of what's happening down below in the current iteration of the Glen. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and our hair is a central part of our culture. It's always been for both, male and female identified people. And like, if you're going into like the hoteps of us out there, I'm one of them folks, but like the hair and the coils of the hair are the connection to the sun, and the connection to the power, the connection to the origin space. Gotcha. And so if you have that knowledge and understanding, which is clear, the directors and the writers of this movie have this understanding, and that's why they kept the afro, and the afro is a symbol of Black power. Even though you were becoming closer, you're in your proximity to whiteness, you still had this like core central connection to origin space and origin power through the afro, and through the connection.
But it wasn't through lack of trying. They were trying to get the hair to change.
They were trying to get the hair to change, but they weren't, because the evolution of the human that they created, that archetype of this white Black person with the afro was the thing that was there. They weren't trying to change that afro.
I think they were. I remember the original Fontaine saying, the hair is the last thing to change because it's been so stubborn, but we'll keep working on it and we'll get it right eventually. So he said in his conversation to the current Fontaine that they were trying to get that. The only reason the hair still looked Black identified was because it was being stubborn and they hadn't quite figured out how to get that to fully change. So
missed that.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts about a Black man being the originator of this assimilation project? How does that land on you?
Because that was a Black person that was thinking that assimilation was better than annihilation. That was a Black person that is choosing that. And there's in every iteration of capitalism and hierarchy, you do need these folks who but you do have these characters, these folks who prescribe to assimilation. A lot of people in the US who are Black identified prescribe to assimilation, prescribe to the narratives that they have to the narratives that they have been feeding us, the ways that they've been controlling our mind. Right. So I didn't have there's also the narrative that Black folks sold slaves,
that's how it landed on me. I felt like it was I didn't like that choice, I guess. I understand it as you're putting it to me now, but my gut reaction when I watched the movie the first time was that it was classic whiteness that they would choose to depict a Black man as the driver of the assimilation project. I don't know. That felt very white, mighty white.
I forgot about it. So I'm in reflection of it, because I really did that didn't hold a significant an impact to me that it was Fontaine.
Interesting.
Because I understand trying to survive in oppression.
Right.
And so what that Fontaine's character made the decision that directing, I guess, the assimilation is better than annihilation. He says it.
Yeah, yeah. He explains that that's why he's doing it. Yeah.
And then, yeah, in a racial context, I understand that making sense because we wouldn't exist in any way.
Right.
What I appreciated and loved is the disruption of that from the pimp, the hoe, and the prostitute, the characters that people kind of disregard out of our communities.
Right, right.
And those people are still part of the community. Like they still are part of the community in different ways. And pimping and hoeing, I think, takes on all kinds of iterations. I just think that in Black community archetypes, you see it like exaggerated. That's the word that I want to use. You like see it exaggerated, but like this whole concept of a man having control and power over a woman and exploiting the feminine for their own gain is a part of the capitalistic structure, right?
Right,
right. You know, gender. Right. Assigning things to specific genders for the purposefulness of control. And then I also love that this came out of a racist joke. So, you know, a pimp, a
drug dealer and a hoe walk into a bar. To
the bar, and like what happens, and it's just like that's how we get to the future race, you know, in the whole context. So like all of the layers of convolution that this movie gives us are the layers of convolution that capitalism and white supremacy give us as it's talking about mind controlling, specifically in the Black community. I feel like this was a movie for Black folks who want to get awoke. You say
get woken up to what? Because I feel like Black folks knows so much more. The Black community knows so much more about this than white people do. So I'm curious about what.
Not the level of mind control, because there's a lot of people
that
are walking around not recognizing that the food is unhealthy, not recognizing that the hair that we're coming from a very privileged social justice arm where we're paying attention to these things, but the masses of people are listening to the music, are having the impacts of the music, are eating the food, are becoming very, very unhealthy in our communities, are having a specific relationship to their faith base that's being tripped, and faith base is a core component of the culture coming out of the continent of Africa. There's always been some faith component that has been central to existing, like social relationships. All of those things, the masses are not really paying attention to, or just going along with this assimilation, and also are being very anti-Black in their existence, and not recognizing the level of anti-Blackness when you're walking around and your belief system is that which those who are in control and power, and you can only ascribe to those. Then you need to have these movies to like wake yourself up into thinking about how you're impacted by these things.
I really loved another piece that I loved about the storyline and how it unfolded was when the three main characters, the pimp, the drug dealer, the Fontaine, Slick, and Yo-Yo, when they come to the realization and they want to storm the gates, as it were, storm the underground system, they utilize, because they know they're being watched, right? They know they're being listened to. They know they're being watched, everything that they do. So in order to not tip off the white man that they have figured out what the circumstances are, they come up with a plan and they communicate with each other while they're still doing the things that the white community, that whiteness expects them to do. So at one point, one of the characters, I think it was Biddy, who's giving information to a rival drug dealer, because the plan is that Fontaine will get shot again. and he'll supposedly die, and they'll come and pick his body up and take him down to the bunker, and that's how they'll get in.
Infiltrate.
Yeah, that's how they infiltrate. But they've got to pass this information. They've got to come up with this plan and then like pass the details along. So at one point, Biddy's she's another character that's a prostitute in the Glen, and she's pretending like she's servicing somebody while she's talking to him. So her body's bobbing up and down like this, but they're talking plans. And that's not the first, there's like 2 or 3 different scenes where they're sharing information about the plan, but they're doing it within the context visually of what they would normally be doing. And I just thought that was hilarious because, it's just it can be so easy because whiteness can be so blind to the awakening and what people are doing. As long as we're seeing what we feel like we should be seeing, we're like, phew, everything's good and nothing's being disrupted. Yeah. So I thought that was brilliant. So many nuggets, so many layers. Nuggets. You said layers, and that is like the perfect word. There are so many layers.
There's complete layers. And then like the whole other layer of all of the folks that that in the construct of this community in the Glen that they've tried to keep separate and at war with each other. Mm-hmm. They all have to start having this underlying conversation with each other to execute the plan. Yes. And go forward with dismantling and disrupting this cycle of cloning these archetypes that are harming communities so that they continue with this lab. And so you get to the place where everybody is working together to dismantle and disrupt. So like there's also messaging in that is that you need a united front of people that have that play different positions to come together to actually disrupt these systems of mind control that is impacting everyone. What else was juicy and good in this?
Oh gosh. Well, towards the end when they liberate the clones, right? They get all the clones out of there because they've got this big warehouse space with lots of pods in it where the clones are being developed, and so they let them all go. Well, these clones don't have, because when they would put another clone out into the Glen, they would give them the memories of previous iterations so that when they went out into the world, they knew who they were, they knew how to function, they knew all of these things. Well, when they release all the clones, first of all, a bunch of naked people walking around, and they're coming up to the surface from this underground lab, and they don't know who they are, they don't know where they are, they don't know what, they don't have any of the memories, they don't have any of the foundational information. They're just these bodies walking around. They are decolonized. They're fresh. They're fresh, right? They're brand new. And so, I thought that was such an interesting scene to see how the news people were relating what they were seeing and what was happening, because a lot of them were white, and then and they just don't know what to do with themselves. All these naked black people walking around, it's fascinating. And then I don't know if we want to give like the very last reveal away or if we want to hold that back. At the very end. Well, at the very end, after liberation happens, we suddenly see a new version of Fontaine. He's got a different name, and he's in a different city. If you're remembering the very end of the movie, did you track that?
My memory escapes me at this moment.
So
the type is just placed in another place,
right? It just they show that they at the very end of the movie, when everything has been revealed in the Glen, we now find ourselves in LA, and all of the same characters, because they're doing all the same thing. And it's a very LA version of the story and the tropes and but it's all the same. The Fontaine character is coming out of the thing. Oh, and the elders, we didn't talk about remember the elder that was outside of the community of the convenience store, and he portrays, you expect or think that he's just this drunk who's always sitting there and always drinking and always out of it, but he knew that Tyrone was being cloned, and he would drop these little Easter eggs, and once Tyrone figured out he was being cloned, the first time he revisited the elder and he heard the Easter egg, he was like, wait a minute, you know what's going on. You've always known,
You
I
hold
thought
the
that was really
knowledge.
cool.
You hold the knowledge, and that like really speaks to like this intergenerational conversation, is that we kind of like discard people in our communities that really do hold a lot of wisdom, but they have chosen to check out, and we don't give them any credibility, really, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's because they are not participating and playing with the cloning and the mind control that's happening. And they look like a crazy person or unhoused person or an alcoholic person that has just checked out. And they have checked out. They've checked out of being having their mind controlled. So it's really a very beautiful movie. And if this conversation seems like it was all over the place, because there's so many components of mind control that this movie is speaking into and describing, as far as like the tropes and the overgeneralization in the Black community in particular. And I think it's a transformative. I think it's a really well done movie. There's a couple of them out there that really make you check in with the realities that we exist in. And so.
Well, the last movie talk we had was about the American Society of the Magical Negroes, and that was another one. I mean, this felt like right along those lines in terms of the messaging, and how the messaging for people that look like me was so intentional, but also different than the messaging for people that look like you, and how both sides. I mean, it's like a perfect Pixar movie, the animated movies, where they put enough nuggets in for the kids to be laughing, but they also put the nuggets in for the adults to be laughing. So it's a movie for both. In contrast, which I think is interesting, just to end this movie talk, Brian and I watched another movie the other day that seemed to be trying to do a similar thing that They Cloned Tyrone did, but in a way more. We had to turn it off. We couldn't watch it. Undercover Brother. Have you seen that? Oh my God, it was bad.
I don't know. I don't.
I mean,
there's another movie that I'm thinking about where it has capitalism basically transforming humans into animals to be like workhorses.
Oh wow. No,
that's another really, really good one. I'll tell you the name of that the next time. But I did want to go out to Annihilation is Better Than Assimilation. And I had a note that I made that the type of assimilation that was being proposed in They Cloned Tyrone is annihilation.
Yes.
And so that is something.
It's not an either or. Yes.
As an indigenous, right? And thinking about like the assimilation of indigenous communities as the U.S. territory was being formed, they were sending young indigenous young people to schools, but that was like completely breaking down the fabric of indigenous communities when they were young people away, trying to train them in different ways of understanding, knowing, and being in culture, and that has completely annihilated the demographic of our population and humanity when you do this type of assimilation. And especially because you're trying to hold the authenticity of the difference that the community brings. And so it's really some real fuckery out there. That's the best way I can say it. It's real
complete fuckery
exists.
Yeah. So anybody that's listening, and if you're watching on YouTube, we want to watch the movie. And then we want to hear in the comments, what were your thoughts? Did we miss something that you saw that you wanted to share with us?
And we didn't get to everything. We
did not get to everything. No,
we have a conversation.
So many things. So but thank you for the dialogue. I appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
All right. Blessings.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time. As you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Diane. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.